Friends, I welcome you all to our today's session on international trade and business. And in the previous class, I had initiated the discussion on international trade theories, and we'll continue our learning. So let me share the screen with you. And there are various international theories are there. Selectively, some of the theories we'll be learning because large number of theories are there in fact. So I'll be showing a list of theories. That is again not the exhaustive list. Let me share the screen with you right now. So if you see the list of the theories, what we have planned to learn, one is mercantilism theory. We know basic things about that already. We had discussed in the previous class. And there is one connected theory is also there that is called as neo-mercantilism theory and the theory of absolute cost advantage. These are the three theories we have in fact discussed. But after that, we'll be learning this thing, comparative cost advantage theory, then comparative cost advantage theory with money, then relative factor endowment theory, that's also referred to as Oxer-Wayne theory, then product life cycle theories, and after that also few more theories also we are going to learn. And basically when we learned this mercantilism theory, we have understood this is the oldest theory in international trade. And the believers of the theory believes that a country should hold its treasure in the form of gold. In fact, they believe that countries' wealth should be represented by gold. Or you can say, if the country is having gold reserve, then the country will be considered as a wealthy. The entire wealth of the country should be there in the form of gold. And these theories, believers also suggest that countries should export more and import less, and the trade surplus should be converted in gold that should be stored with the country. That was the belief. Okay, but as you know, what happened in those days, in those old days, there were colonial powers like Britishers or let us say French colonies are also there. Okay, so and there are some countries where these colonies were placed. So what happened in those days, the colonial powers enjoyed the trade surplus, and they in fact forced the colonies to experience trade deficits. So only few countries were having trade surpluses, and most of the countries were facing trade deficits. So that created a kind of imbalance in international trade and commerce. So this theory was not considered as an acceptable theory. In fact, this theory failed. Okay, and in those days, in international monetary system, there was gold standard was in operation. That gold standard also failed, and this theory also failed. Okay, so after that, this theory got modified. Then one more theory came in the form of neo-mercantilism theory. Let me show you. Yeah, that also we had discussed. So here, the theory is based on one more concept. The basis of the theory is that the country should produce more than their own requirement. Okay, what is demanded or what is the domestic demand? Country should produce more than that. If a country does so, what will happen? It will be able to achieve the social objective, like full employment. People will be engaged in the production of goods and services, isn't it? Because country is producing more and more. And country will also be able to attain this political objective of assisting a friendly country. It will also be able to help its neighboring countries, friendly country. So here the believers feel that the country, every country, what they should do, they produce more than their requirement. Okay, and here this theory also suggests the real wealth of the country is not gold, but rather the capacity of the country to produce goods and services. Okay, so wealth of the nation is based on its availability of goods and services. So that is the way. But after that, few more theories also came. So one important theory was absolute cost advantage theory, which is developed by Mr. Adam Smith, very popular name, you know, your father of economics, and which says that the different countries can produce different goods depending upon the advantages they are having. Okay, so each country should analyze what kind of advantage it is having in the context of international trade and produce those goods. And if a country is producing that goods, it will be able to produce those goods in an efficient manner. It will be able to produce it in more efficiently. Right. And in fact, Adam Smith suggests that the mercantilism weakens a country. Only free trade can increase the wealth of the countries. So how free trade will happen? Free trade will happen when each country will produce something and each country will consume something. Then only there will be flow of goods and services. So each country should specialize in production of some goods and services and import other goods and services. Now questions come on which goods and services a country should specialize. A country should specialize in production of those goods and services which are cost advantages to it. So every country should specialize in some production, some products or some services. It should produce those goods or services and export those things and import other products. Right. So this theory suggests that trade between two countries can take place when one country is producing something and importing other goods and services. Okay. And countries should know what are those goods and services which are cost advantages to it. And it should produce those goods and services which are cost advantages. It should not waste its effort in producing those goods and services which are not advantageous. Let some other country produce that thing, and this country will be able to import those goods and services. Okay, so we have taken an example also to understand that thing. We'll be seeing that example, and this theory argues that there might be several advantages accruing to a country. For example, there might be advantages like skilled labor and specialization advantages. That means one country might be skilled to produce some goods and services. Okay, like in craftsmanship, carpentry work, some countries laborers are more skillful. Okay, so that kind of advantage one country might be having, or the country might be having some natural advantages like production of some agricultural let us say products like production of mango, cotton, coconut, etc. India has got a natural advantage for that. And skilled advantage, let us say Switzerland laborers are good at producing watches. That is a skilled labor and specialization advantage, natural advantage you have seen. So if those advantages are not there, a country can still acquire some advantages through acquiring technology and skill. For example, you can see that Japan is having the skill in production of steel. Country may not be having natural advantage, but it has acquired this technological advantage. So like this, each country might be having some advantage. It may be skilled labor or specialization advantage, or it might be a natural advantage, or it might be some acquired advantage. And countries should focus on producing goods and services which are advantages to it. Okay. And to understand that theory, the assumptions are relevant. Assumptions are, just to explain this theory, these assumptions are taken. Assumptions are trade is happening between two countries. So in our assumption, in our example, we will see that there are only two countries are involved. Don't think that is impractical. It's not like that. Only for explaining that example, the assumptions are used. Only two commodities are traded. That is also assumption. And also it says free trade exists between the countries. There is no restriction as regards to import and export of goods. There is no custom duty, no import and export barriers. And again, it says there is only one element of cost of production, which is labor. That means by using labor only, we'll be producing goods and services. Okay, understood these assumptions? I have discussed it earlier. Again, purposefully I'm repeating, so because the next theory is connected to this. Understood? These are the assumptions. Okay, and with that assumption, let us see this example. Look at this table. Two countries are involved. As you can see, one country is, can you tell me the country's name? Who are the two countries involved in this example? One is Japan and other one is India. And two products are involved. You can see pen and series. And you can see in this example, we are taking here output per day of labor. That means for 1 day's labor, how much of pens are produced, how much of CDs are produced in Japan and India are analyzed here. So if you look at here, it says that in 1 day of labor, or by using 1 day of labor, Japan can produce 20 pens, whereas India can produce 60 pens. So definitely India is good at production of pens. But whereas when it comes to CDs, Japan is capable of producing 6 pens for 1 labor day, whereas India is capable of producing 2 CDs per labor day. So if you look at this example, it clearly indicates that Japan has got absolute cost advantages in producing CDs, and India has got absolute cost advantage in producing pens. Right? So therefore, India should focus on producing pens and Japan should focus on producing CDs. That means Japan should import pens and India should import CDs. If this thing happens, export and import will be promoted between both the countries. It will promote international trade and commerce. That is what this theory suggests. Hope you have understood. There are certain implications of this theory. As you can observe here, by trading, two countries can have more quantities of both the products. Because India, by using the same time, can produce more pens. And Japan can produce more CDs by using the same amount of labor. So more quantities can be produced. And the living standard of people of both the countries will be improved. Okay, because imported things will be cheaper. So they can use that things. If CDs will be produced in India, it will be costly. People may not be able to consume it. But imported CDs will be cheaper because it is produced more efficiently in Japan. So people will be able to consume those goods and services effectively. Their living standard will improve. And you have already seen in this process, inefficiency in producing is avoided. Production inefficiencies are avoided because each country is producing those goods and services in which they are efficient at. Right? And as you see, ultimately, the global efficiency and effectiveness is increased. Global productivity is increased. Okay, so this is the implication of that thing. Okay, now this theory has got some criticisms also. Let us go through these criticisms. Okay, as you know, the theory suggests that each country should produce at least one at lowest cost. Okay, each country should produce some. Each country should find out what are the goods and services which is most advantageous to it. It should produce that, at least one goods and services. But many countries may not have that absolute advantage with respect to any goods also. But still they want to participate in international trade. What can they do? That is the big question here. That is one issue. Now, one more issue you can think of. The countries' sizes are different. One country might be a small country, another country might be a big country. Let us say India is a big country, Japan is a small country. for producing paints for the entire Japan is not a difficult thing from India. But producing CDs for entire India may be a challenge for Japan because market size is too large. So that is one more criticism. And also one more ground the theory is criticized, that the theory has explained considering only one resources of production, that is labor. But that's not the only resource of production. You need capital, you need material, you need many other things to produce goods and services. Actually, varieties of resources are important that has not been taken into consideration in explaining this theory. That is one more ground for which the theory is criticized. The fourth criticism is transportation cost is ignored. So we have taken this example that how much series and how much paints can be produced, how many paints can be produced in India and Japan. But when India imports series from Japan or Japan imports paints from India, transportation cost will be there. So ultimately the landing cost might be more, maybe much more than the cost of goods. Therefore, it may not be wise to import a particular product, even if it is the cost of production is less in a foreign country. So this aspect has not been thought up in this theory, and that ground the theory is also criticized. Fifth ground is the scale of economics. When production volume increases, the cost normally comes down. So the volume has got an impact on the cost of production. That factor has not been considered. Let us say India may not be good at production of CDs, but if the volume increases, India may be able to produce CD at a lower cost. And Japan may be efficient in paint production also if volume increases. So that aspect also has not been taken into consideration while this theory is explained. And lastly, one more issue is that there might be countries which has absolute cost advantage for many products. So what they'll be doing? So that has to be taken into consideration. Okay. Yes, you have any query here? Please ask your query. No query? Okay. If you do not have any doubt, now let us move to the next theory. As you can see, this is not absolute cost advantage. This is called as the comparative cost advantage theory, which is developed by Mr. David Ricardo. All of you must have heard his name. Okay. So absolute cost advantage we have seen, the grounds on which they are criticized. Now, this theory is little improvement over that. The absolute cost advantage theory, or ACA theory, fails to explain a situation when one country has absolute cost advantage in producing many products. There is no explanation in ACA theory. Okay. And because of this kind of situation, because of this type of criticism, another theory is developed, which is called as CCA, that is comparative cost advantage theory. This theory has tried to address that issue. Okay, what this theory suggests, what comparative cost advantage theory suggests? This theory suggests that a country should produce and export those products for which it is relatively more competitive than that of other countries. Okay, if you read this sentence carefully, it is not saying that it is absolutely competitive or absolutely cost advantage. One country may not have absolute cost advantage. Okay, or it may not be having a kind of absolute competitive advantage, but it might be having some relative competitive advantage. So a country should produce and export those products for which it is relatively more competitive than that of other, and import other goods for which the other countries are more productive than it. So that means whether there is some advantage or not, it is to be not to be considered in absolute term. It has to be considered in relative terms. That is what this theory suggests. Okay, it has to be considered in relative terms. Now let us see. Let us try to understand it in terms of this example. Almost similar kind of example you can see. Okay, output per day of labor. Here in this example also, we have taken two countries. One is Japan, other one is India. And two products are also taken into consideration. Product one is pen, product two is CDs. Right, pens and CDs. If you look at here, you can understand that per day of labor, with per day of labor, tell me how many pens Japan can produce. This is Japan, this is pens. How many pens Japan can produce for a day of labor? Can anyone reply?
60.
60. How many pens India can produce for 1 day of labor?
50.
50. How many CDs Japan can produce for 1 day of labor?
6.
6. And how many CDs India can produce for 1 day of labor?
2.
2. Now let us think about, now we are already aware of the theory of ACA, that is absolute cost advantage theory. Now please tell me, which country is having absolute cost advantages as regards to production of pens? Which country has got advantage?
Japan.
Japan. Now also please tell me, which country has got absolute cost advantages as regards to production of CDs?
Japan.
Again, Japan. So you see, if you think about absolute cost advantage, now you think that there is a country who is having absolute cost advantage with respect to many products, more than one. Okay. And there is a country who is not having absolute cost advantages with respect to any products. This is a problem in ACA theory. Okay. Then which country should produce one so that there will be international trade and commerce? So there can be some export or import. Okay. Can you suggest something? This theory has come up with some solution. It says, okay, if this is so, in this kind of situation, please do not think in absolute terms. Please think in relative terms. Relative terms means, you know, in production of pens, which country is superior? Just now you tell me. Which country is superior?
Sir, it's Japan.
It's Japan. Now, please see, it is superior, but Japan is superior, you can say, in case of production of pens, 1.2 times superior. Right? 50 is to 60. Is it not? Whereas production of CDs, again, Japan is superior, but 3 times superior. 2 and 6. Right? So you can say, by looking at here, Japan is more superior, or you can say more better, or more productive, or more efficient with regards to production of what? Pens or CDs?
CDs.
CDs. So that's what the theory says. If that is so, if you're thinking in relative terms, then let Japan produce CDs and import pens. Let India produce CDs and import CDs.
वो बता दिया food taste ला मुझे.
Okay. Right? Now. Okay. So if you see,
बहुत मिल गया. दे दे दे.
Please mute yourself. Please mute yourself, all of you. All of you are muted. Please participate. Whenever a question is asked, please unmute and then reply. Otherwise, by default, keep it in mute. Yes, friends. Now, we have seen Japan has got absolute cost advantage both in paints and CDs. And Japan is 3 times superior in CD production and 1.2 times superior in paints production. So therefore, Japan is relatively better or comparatively better in CDs, and India is better in paint production. So if that is so, Japan should focus on production of CDs and India should focus on production of paints. The theory has got certain assumptions. Like assumption 1, there exists full employment. People are fully employed. Why this assumption is necessary? Because if people are not employed, even then, in that situation, the country might be willing that let people produce something, even if it is not advantageous to them, so that they'll be engaged. But here our assumption is that people are full employed. If people are full employed, then go for production which are relatively more cost advantageous. And as you have seen, this theory has also considered there is only one element of cost of production, that is labor. Okay, that assumption is taken here. There is no trade barrier. There is no restriction as regards to import or export. Trade is free from cost. There is no transportation cost. Trade takes place only between 2 countries. Here only 2 countries are involved and 2 products are traded. That is one more assumption. There is no transportation cost. There is no, let us say, import-export duty. These are the assumptions which are involved in explaining this theory. Okay, this theory has got several implications. First of all, if this thing happens, that means if production happens in this manner, there will be efficient allocation of global resources. Meaning, the production facility will be distributed evenly throughout the world. Efficiently, the resources will be allocated. Global production can be maximized at least cost. And countries will be buying goods from other countries which are relatively good. Better for countries to specialize in production in which they are relatively good. So they'll be focusing on production of few countries and they'll become specialists in that production. Demand for resources will be optimized. Resources will be utilized to the maximum. Prices will become more and less equal because it will be produced in few places only. So cost of production will be consistent. Prices will become more or less equal. These are the implications. Okay. But the theory is also criticized on certain ground. It fails to consider the money value of cost of production. It has only explained how many goods and services can be produced per day of labor. It has not converted it into money terms. Okay. What is the real value of that goods and services? That has not been considered. For example, the price or value of a pen is not same as value of a CD. They're different. So that factor has not been considered. Okay, did you understand this theory? Yes or no? Okay, did you understand?
Yes, sir.
Right. So, how many theories you cover? Mercantilism, neo-mercantilism, then theory of absolute cost advantage, and theory of comparative cost advantage. And you have seen the biggest problem with comparative cost advantage theory is that it has not considered the value. And to overcome this thing, the next theory has come up, That is comparative cost advantage theory with money. Okay, just I'm giving you some brief introduction. Next class, I'll be explaining you that concept. With money means these products are converted into money terms. Okay, just to give you some idea, I'm sharing the screen with you, how it can be converted into some money terms. Just here we have to assume something. You have to take into consideration what is the daily wage rate in India and Japan. Okay, once we know daily wage rate is this part. Okay, let us say Indian wage rate is something in Indian rupees and Japanese wage rate is something in Japanese yen. Now we know by paying that much of wages, how much of pens or how much of CDs can be produced. So one can find out what is the cost of production of pens in India and pens in Japan. What is the cost of production of pens in pens in India and Japan. Similarly, CDs in India and CDs in Japan. In the both the places, both the countries, if both the products are produced, what is the cost of production? One can find it out. Yes or no? And that is not enough. One has to keep in mind the exchange rate. That means how much of Indian rupee is equivalent to how much of Japanese yen. That aspect also has to be kept in mind. Considering all these things, that means considering production per day of labor, considering the wage rate in India and Japan, and also taking into consideration the exchange rate between these two countries, will arrive at what is the cost of production of different products at different countries. On that basis, decision will be taken which country will be producing what, which country will be importing what. Got some idea? I'll be explaining you with the help of some example. Okay, so now we have created foundation for that. We have seen the absolute cost advantage theory. We have also seen the comparative cost advantage theory. Now we are in a position to understand the comparative cost advantage theory with money. Okay, friends, is it clear to you? Okay. Yes or no?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, you have any query? No. Okay, so we'll do one thing. We'll wind up our today's session here, unless you have any other query. Next class, we'll catch up absolute cost advantage theory with money. Okay. Okay, then. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.